The planet was dead. Gray dust covered everything. The sky was filled with dark clouds that never moved. The air was thin, dry, and lifeless. No wind, no sound, just silence. It was a graveyard of a world, abandoned for longer than anyone could remember. And yet, beneath the surface, something had survived. Professor Zeltar adjusted the filters on his breathing mask. The underground chamber was old, far older than any recorded civilization in the galactic archives. The walls were covered in symbols, carved with precision into stone harder than diamond. The language was unknown, but the message was clear. This place was meant to stay buried. "This is it," Zeltar whispered. His 4 eyes flickered with excitement as he turned to his team. "We found something ancient, something important." His assistant, a young researcher named Vorka, stepped forward. "Professor, the scanners are picking up something behind this wall." Zeltar nodded. "Then let's see what secrets it holds." The excavation drones moved in, their plasma cutters humming as they carefully carved through the stone. It took hours. The deeper they went, the more complex the carvings became. Strange patterns, warnings in forgotten scripts, and images of towering figures unlike any species in the galaxy. Then, with a final crack, the wall gave way. A massive stone door slid open, revealing a dark chamber beyond. A cold wind rushed out, sending a shiver through the team. The air smelled wrong, like something ancient had been waiting for this moment. Inside, rows of towering shelves stretched into the darkness. Scrolls, tablets, and holographic records lined every surface. Dust covered everything, but the technology was still intact. Vorka stepped forward, activating one of the holographic projectors. A blue light flickered, and a message appeared, written in dozens of languages, some known, some completely alien. Zeltar leaned closer, his breath catching in his throat as he read the words. "Do not wake them." The room grew colder. The team exchanged uneasy glances. Vorka swallowed hard. "Professor, who are they?" Zeltar didn't answer. His mind raced through everything he had studied, every lost civilization, every myth. But none of them had ever spoken of a warning like this. He turned back to the shelves, reaching for another tablet. The symbols on it seemed oddly familiar. He activated the scanner, letting the computer translate. As the words appeared on the screen, his blood ran cold. It was a name that had been erased from galactic history. Earth. The Galactic Council did not want to hear about the discovery. Professor Zeltar sent a report immediately after finding the hidden vault, but the response was almost instant: silence. No acknowledgement, no request for more information, nothing. For a matter of such importance, the lack of reaction was strange, suspicious. His assistant, Vorka, paced nervously inside their research vessel. "Professor, this doesn't make sense. The Council should be sending an entire team to investigate. This is the most important historical discovery in centuries." Zeltar sat at his desk, staring at the holographic projection of the translated texts. The warning still echoed in his mind. "Do not wake them." He adjusted the projection, filtering through different records. The vault contained thousands of texts and data logs, but a few were more intact than others. He selected one of the oldest-looking records and began translating. The words filled the screen slowly, and as he read, his fingers twitched. "We made a terrible mistake." Zeltar leaned forward, eyes narrowing. He continued reading. "They seemed weak at first, but we did not understand. We thought we were superior. We thought we had control. But we were wrong, and by the time we realized our error, it was too late." The log ended there. Vorka stepped closer, reading over his shoulder. "Who wrote this?" she asked, voice uneasy. Zeltar pulled up more records. Many were written in different languages, but after running translations, they all contained the same words, the same warnings. Some logs described battles, entire fleets sent to suppress an unnamed enemy. Others spoke of desperate negotiations, alliances shattered, civilizations falling. But none of them said what happened in the end. "This isn't just one warning," Zeltar murmured. "This is a message from multiple civilizations, and they all feared the same thing." Vorka's claws tapped anxiously against the metal desk. "We have to find out who they are. If we don't—" A sudden beep interrupted her. The ship's long-range sensors had picked up movement. Zeltar turned toward the main console and checked the readings. A ship was approaching, fast, and it wasn't one of theirs. The communication panel blinked red. An incoming message. He hesitated for a moment before answering. The screen flickered, and an unfamiliar alien appeared, a high-ranking official from the Galactic Council. His expression was grim. "You were warned to stay away," the official said. "Shut down your research. Leave the planet immediately. This is your only warning." Zeltar frowned. "But we've discovered—" "Destroy the data," the official interrupted. "Forget what you saw." The screen went dark. The transmission was cut. Vorka stared at Zeltar. "Professor, they're afraid." He exhaled slowly. "Yes, but of what?" Neither of them had an answer. Zeltar looked back at the translated records. His hands hovered over the console, hesitating. Then, ignoring the council's warning, he opened another file. This one was older than the rest. The translation took longer, but when it finally appeared, his breath caught. It was not a warning. It was a plea. "If you are reading this, do not search for them. Do not try to find Earth. Do not wake the humans." The warning had the opposite effect. It made Zeltar even more determined to learn the truth. The Galactic Council wanted this buried. That meant it was dangerous. That meant it was important. And if multiple civilizations had left behind desperate warnings about Earth, then something terrible had happened long ago. Something that had been erased from history. Zeltar wasn't going to leave without answers. He turned to Vorka, his voice firm. "Prepare the data transfer. We're taking everything." Vorka hesitated. "But the Council—" "The Council is hiding something," Zeltar interrupted. "And I want to know what." Vorka swallowed hard but nodded. She activated the scanning drones, which began uploading all the vault's data into their ship's computers. The process would take time. There were thousands of records, all in different formats. Zeltar turned back to the main console and searched for the oldest records. The first mentions of Earth. If he could find the beginning of this mystery, maybe he could understand the ending. One file stood out. It was the most damaged, its data fragmented, but the translation program worked through it piece by piece. "We thought they were just another species. We thought they could be controlled. We were wrong." The next section was unreadable. Then another sentence appeared. "They adapted. No matter what we did, they survived. They learned. They evolved." More missing text. "Then, when the war began, we had the numbers. We had the technology. But they had something else, something we did not understand. And by the time we realized the truth, we had already lost." Zeltar's heart pounded. This was it. This was what the Council wanted to erase. "Professor," Vorka called out, her voice shaking, "we have a problem." Zeltar turned to her. She pointed at the ship's external sensors. A fleet was approaching. A Galactic Council enforcement squad. "They're coming to silence us," she whispered. Zeltar clenched his fists. "We're not leaving without the truth." The download progress was at 82%. Almost there. A message came through from the lead enforcement ship. The screen flickered, showing a hardened-looking officer. His expression was unreadable. "Professor Zeltar," he said, "you have violated direct orders. Surrender now, or we will open fire." Zeltar's mind raced. The Council was willing to kill to keep this secret. That meant what he had found was bigger than he had imagined. He turned back to the console, watching the download bar inch closer to 100%. He had to stall. "Why is Earth so dangerous?" Zeltar asked. Why are you afraid? The officer's face darkened. He didn't answer immediately. Then, in a quiet, measured voice, he said something that sent chills through Zeltar's body. We are not afraid of Earth. He paused, his eyes cold. We are afraid of what happens when humans wake up. Before Zeltar could respond, the transmission ended. The fleet's weapons powered up, and the countdown to fire had begun. The countdown had started. The Galactic Council's fleet was preparing to fire. Zeltar had no doubt about their intentions. The Council wasn't coming to arrest him. They were coming to erase him, to ensure that no one ever learned the truth about Earth. Vorka's claws flew over the control panel. Professor, the download is at 94%, but we don't have much time. They're locking weapons on us. Zeltar's mind raced. Fighting back was impossible. His research ship was unarmed. Running was an option, but if they left before the download finished, they would lose priceless information. He looked at the massive databanks inside the vault. This place had survived for eons, hidden from the galaxy. If the Council was willing to destroy them just for looking at the records, what else were they hiding? The ship's alarm blared. Target locked. The first warning shot was coming. Vorka's voice shook. We have to go. Now. Zeltar took a deep breath. Then he made his decision. Divert all power to shields and engines, he ordered. As soon as the download completes, we jump to hyperspace. Vorka hesitated but obeyed. The ship trembled as energy redirected to the shields. It wouldn't hold against a full attack, but it might buy them seconds. Precious seconds. The final data packets trickled in. 98%, 99%. The comm system crackled to life again. The same council officer appeared on screen, his expression colder than before. This is your last chance. Power down your ship and surrender. Zeltar met his gaze. I can't do that. A brief silence. Then the officer's voice dropped to a whisper. You don't understand what you're playing with. Zeltar narrowed his eyes. Then tell me. The officer's expression hardened. You think you've uncovered a secret about Earth. But the truth isn't just hidden. It was buried for a reason. We aren't protecting the galaxy from humans. We're protecting humans from the galaxy. Zeltar's breath caught. He hadn't expected that. They don't know the truth, the officer continued. They don't remember. And if you wake them, if they remember what was done to them. The countdown hit 0. The Council fleet opened fire. The first blast hit the vault entrance, sending shockwaves through the underground chamber. Dust and debris rained down as the ancient structure groaned under the impact. The second shot slammed into the planet's surface, shaking the ground violently. The ship's console flashed. DOGODVNLOAD complete. Zeltar didn't hesitate. Engage hyperspace drive. Now. Vorka activated the jump sequence. The ship's engines roared to life. Just as the next barrage of fire rained down, their ship vanished into hyperspace, escaping by a fraction of a second. Silence filled the cockpit. The only sound was their ragged breathing. Zeltar stared at the data drive, his hands trembling. They had the information. They had the truth. And now, they were fugitives. Vorka exhaled. Professor, what do we do now? Zeltar straightened, his eyes burning with determination. Now, we find Earth. The ship hurtled through hyperspace, but Zeltar felt no relief. They had escaped the Council's fleet, but he knew this was just the beginning. They were fugitives now. The Council would not stop hunting them. Every port, every station, every ally they had would be watched. The moment they resurfaced, they would be silenced. Yet, none of that mattered. Zeltar had something more valuable than his own safety, the truth. Vorka sat across from him, staring at the data drive they had stolen from the vault. Professor, we have everything now. But what if the Council is right? What if waking them really is a mistake? Zeltar's fingers tightened around the drive. Then we need to understand why before they erase this knowledge forever. He plugged the device into the ship's system. The screen flickered, and thousands of ancient records filled the air as holograms. Some were texts, others were recordings, but they all spoke of the same thing: Earth. He selected one of the oldest recordings. A grainy image appeared. An alien from a long-forgotten species stared into the recorder. It spoke in a language that barely translated. To whoever finds this, it is too late for us. The beam looked tired, desperate. Behind it, explosions flickered in the distance. They were not what we thought they were. We thought they could be broken, controlled, but no matter how much we took from them, they endured. And then, they changed. The beam's voice trembled. They should not have survived. They should not have adapted, but they did. And now nothing can stop them. The recording cut out. Zeltar exhaled slowly. He had seen countless records of war in his studies, but nothing like this. These were not warnings of conquest or destruction. They were warnings of fear. Vorka scrolled through the files and pulled up an ancient star map. "Professor," she said, her voice uneasy, "I found something." A set of coordinates glowed on the screen. Zeltar's eyes widened. It was Earth. Vorka turned to him. "If this is real, then Earth still exists." Zeltar nodded. "And we're going to find it." Vorka hesitated. "The Council will throw everything at us." A small smile crossed Zeltar's face. "Then they must be very afraid of what we'll find." He input the coordinates into the ship's navigation. Their course was set. They were going to Earth. The journey to Earth was unlike any Zeltar had ever taken. Their ship had to move carefully, avoiding detection at every turn. The Galactic Council had already declared them traitors. Every station, every trade hub, every friendly contact they had was being watched. But Zeltar didn't care. They were getting closer to the truth. Vorka worked at the console, scanning the star map. "Professor, I've double-checked the coordinates. There's nothing there." Zeltar frowned. "That doesn't make sense. The records are clear. Earth exists." Vorka sighed. "It existed, but there's no trace of it now. No active signals. No planetary readings. Just empty space." Zeltar leaned over the controls. He manually adjusted the scanners, pushing them beyond normal limits. If Earth had been erased from the official maps, it would take more than basic scans to find it. Minutes passed. Then, a faint anomaly. Vorka's eyes widened. There. A gravitational distortion. Zeltar grinned. A cloaking field. The Council hadn't just hidden Earth from history. They had physically concealed it. He adjusted their approach, guiding the ship closer to the anomaly. The moment they breached the field, alarms blared. The stars around them shifted. Space itself seemed to ripple. And then, it appeared. A massive planet, blue and green, floating in the void, untouched, silent. Zeltar and Vorka stared. "It's real," Vorka whispered. Zeltar exhaled. "Yes, and now we find out why the Council is so afraid of it." They guided the ship into orbit, scanning the surface. No signs of civilization. No active energy readings. Vorka frowned. "Professor, it looks abandoned." Zeltar shook his head. "No. If the warnings were true, then something is still here. Something waiting." His fingers hovered over the landing controls. A deep sense of unease filled the air. Then, the ship's sensors spiked. An unknown signal activated. From the surface of Earth. And they were not alone. The ship lurched violently, shaking as though the very air around it had turned hostile. Zeltar gripped the controls, his mind racing. The signal from Earth was growing stronger, resonating across the system. It wasn't just a message. It was a summoning. Vorka's voice was tight with fear. "Professor, the planet's gravity is shifting. It's pulling us in." Zeltar barely heard her. His eyes were locked on the surface below. What had looked like an abandoned, lifeless world was changing. Vast structures, hidden beneath centuries of dust and debris, were beginning to rise. Towering monoliths, sleek and metallic, pulsed with blue and red energy, spreading across the land like a reawakening heartbeat. Then came the lights. Not from buildings or machines, but from beneath the surface. A network of underground cities, still intact, still powered, still alive. The transmission returned. "You should not have come." The voice was clearer now, stronger, human. Zeltar's hands trembled. He had studied Earth for decades, sought its mysteries, ignored the warnings. Now, he realized, he hadn't been chasing history. He had been rushing toward a grave. Vorka's claws slammed into the controls. "Professor, I'm activating emergency thrusters. We have tow." The ship froze in place. A force, invisible but undeniable, held them in orbit. Zeltar's blood ran cold. No, that's not possible. Vorka's readings confirmed his fears. They weren't trapped by the planet's gravity. Something on Earth was holding them there. Then, movement. On the dark side of the planet, shadows detached from the surface, rising into space. Ships. But they weren't like any vessels in the Council's records. These were human warships, massive and ancient, their designs unlike anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. Yet, the technology, it was far beyond anything known today. One of the vessels turned toward them. A signal pulsed across the void. The translation came through. "Identify." Zeltar tried to steady his breathing. He had to think carefully. These humans, they weren't the primitive survivors the Council had claimed. They were something else. Something worse. He activated the comms. His voice was hoarse. I am Professor Zeltar of the Galactic Council's Historical Division. We seek only knowledge." Silence. Then, the reply. "The Council. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. They still exist." A low hum vibrated through the ship as the nearest warship scanned them. Zeltar's heart pounded. Then the voice spoke again. "Tell us. Who won?" Zeltar froze. The question was simple, but the weight behind it was immense. He swallowed. I don't understand." The voice sharpened. "Who won the war?" Vorka turned to him, her fur bristling. "Professor, they don't know." Zeltar's stomach twisted. These humans, whoever they were, had been cut off from the galaxy for thousands of years. They didn't know what had happened. They didn't know they had lost. Zeltar's instincts screamed at him to lie, to tell them that humanity had triumphed, that the galaxy still feared them. But the warships, those silent giants, now awake after untold centuries, told him the truth. Humanity had been buried, forgotten, but not defeated. No civilization could have built something like this and simply disappeared. Zeltar's voice was barely a whisper. The Council claimed victory. Silence. Then, laughter. Cold. Amused. Dangerous. They buried us. The warships turned toward the stars, their ancient hulls gleaming under the system's light. They thought time would erase us. Then the voice dropped to a whisper. They were wrong. Zeltar's screen flickered. A data file appeared, an activation signal. The transmission was being sent beyond Earth, to somewhere else. Vorka gasped. "Professor, they're not alone." Zeltar watched as hundreds more ships stirred from their slumber, hidden deep beneath Earth's surface. A fleet, a human fleet, one that had been waiting. And now it was awake. The voice spoke one last time. "Tell the Council. We remember." Then, the warships jumped to hyperspace, and the nightmare the galaxy had tried to forget had just begun.